A scary night. It was late at night when I was walking down the street after classes, as I had missed my last bus back home. I had to walk back, as I had no other choice. The streets can get quite creepy at night, especially when you are on your own. As I was walking, I saw this very mysterious house. You might wonder why I'm saying this. Let me tell you why. It was brightly lit even though this house has been vacant for a very long time. I was curious and crept down the concrete path towards the door. The door creaked and opened on its own as I stood by it. I peeked in. It looked as if there were 1,000 rooms inside. I wanted to see more. As I stood there and looked, I didn't know where to start. My curiosity got the better of me, and I started with the door closest. The hinges were rusty and they creaked as I opened it. It was really scary. Wait. Was there someone in there? No, bro. I didn't dare go further. By then I felt a chill run down my spine and felt hands on my shoulder pushing me into the room. I screamed. It was too late. I fell down and heard the door shut behind me. The room plunged into darkness and became very quiet, except for my heavy breathing. I tried getting up, but something was holding me down. I cried, "Help," but my voice was just not coming out. I managed to get to my feet and tried to unlock the door, but to no avail. There was a presence in the room, but no one was there. I decided to be brave and said, "Hello, hello, hello," but all I heard was my echo. I was trying to unlock the door when suddenly I heard this loud screeching voice. I turned, and standing behind me was this dark figure. It had piercing red eyes that just looked through me. I screamed, and the next thing I knew, it was so close to my face I could smell its breath. It smelled of raw meat and blood. I managed to turn and tried to run, but my feet couldn't move. I felt the hands wrap itself around me and it felt so cold that I couldn't breathe. I started gasping for air and tried to free myself from this thing. I cried out in pain as its arms squeezed tighter. I felt its hands on my throat. "Oh, help!" But my voice was gone. I was struggling, trying to get away, and must have fainted from all that exhaustion because next thing I remember, I was waking up and finding myself back outside the house. I ran all the way home, and I don't know how, but I got home. No one would believe me, so this remains with you and me. My warning to you, watch out for house number 1 on Headless Drive. The old man in the well. Keith was 12 the first time the old man in the well spoke to him. Keith was out playing after dark on the family's small farm near the well. The old well had beams supporting a rope and pulley with a bucket attached, even though Keith was told that well ran dry before he was born. Suddenly, he heard someone say his name in a slow, raspy voice. Keith whirled around and saw no one. A look of confusion spread across his face as he heard it again. "Keith." This time it was said with more force and a bit louder. The voice sounded like one of the old farmers who liked to smoke, thought Keith. Looking down the well, Keith heard the same voice asking, "Have you got anything tasty?" Keith couldn't see anything past the first 12 or so feet down the well, even though it was a full moon. "Who are you? How'd you get down there?" Keith asked. "If you give me something tasty, I'll reward you," replied the voice. All Keith had were some cookies he had stuffed in his pocket as he left to play. He put those in the bucket and it lowered it. He had lowered it nearly 40 feet and was literally at the end of his rope when he no longer felt the weight of the bucket on the rope. 20 seconds passed and he felt the weight of the bucket again and began to pull the bucket up. As he finished pulling the bucket up to the top, he heard the voice say, "No nice?" Keith saw a reflection in the bucket and saw a rectangular piece of silver metal, about the size of an army dog tag. It was completely flat and smooth. "Want fresh?" the voice said. Even though Keith tried to talk to the old man again, there was no response. Keith made up a story about where he found the metal and took it to his father, who took it into town and confirmed it was an ounce of pure silver. After that, Keith kept it a secret. It took a while to discover that the old man was only there the night of full moons. Keith quickly learned that only live things he put in the well would be rewarded, but only once for each item and once every full moon. So one of each kind of animal was lowered down the well and rewarded. Keith now had a cigar box mostly full of silver pieces by the time he was 16, but had run out of different animals to get rewarded for. It was around this time that a local farmhand went missing. It was also the same time that Keith was rewarded with gold pieces for the first time. Once Keith took over the farm, temp workers seemed to vanish every now and then without explanation from the farm. The old man had finally found something tasty enough to always reward: the writing on the wall. A young boy lay sleeping in his bed when he heard footsteps outside his room. He peeked out of his eyes to see what was happening when his door swung open to reveal a murderer carrying corpses of his parents. After silently propping them up on a chair, he wrote something on the wall in the blood of the dead bodies. He then hid under the child's bed. The child got scared beyond belief. He couldn't read the writing on the wall, and he knew the man was under his bed. Like any child, he pretended that he slept through the whole thing and hadn't woken up yet. He lay still as the bodies, quietly, hearing the breathes from under his bed. An hour passed, and his eyes got adjusted to the darkness. He tried making out the words, but it was a struggle. He gasped when he finally read out the sentence. "I know you're awake," he read as he felt something shift underneath his bed. We didn't question why. We didn't question why the small town we'd found after getting lost in the countryside wasn't on the map. We didn't question why the shopkeeper in town didn't have eyebrows or hair on his head. We didn't question why he looked so strangely greedily at us. We didn't question why the gas at the station we stopped at was so luring travelers cheap. We didn't question why the clerk at the station, where her eyebrows and hair, insisted on making a phone call in the back before ringing us up. We didn't question why the funny man outside by our car let us know that the sun was going down. We didn't question why so many bald people stood on the street, watching us frantically leave their town behind. We didn't question why we began pulling our hair out or why we decided to turn around and head back to town. We knew why.